Approved. Councillor La Rochelle,
Here.
Councillor Ward,
Here.
Councillor Lunt,
Here.
and Councillor Crawford.
Here.
Next item.
Good news and recognition.
Anybody have anything they'd like to add for that?
I think that the cheerleaders,
Thank you.
yeah, want to acknowledge them and their success again this year. Congratulations, Lisbon Greyhounds. Not yet. Not yet. Regional states next. Oh, well, I'll start with the real. We'll congratulate them for the regional.
Work our way up.
Best of luck at the states. There we go.
Thank you for the correction from the audience. Anything else? Good news and recognition. Moving right along, Twyla.
Is the under public hearings, we have a public meeting that we posted to hear public comments on Lisbon Emergency, level of service and funding.
I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on behalf of the Lisbon Emergency discussion, please step forward, announce yourself at the podium. Come right down.
Am I the first? Dorothy Fitzgerald, Lisbon Falls. I am in favor of keeping the Lisbon Emergency in town. They are a huge asset. They're always there when we need them. They respond very quickly. They're very professional. My question is, has anyone, town official or on the council, contacted either St. Mary's or the other hospital about any additional or help in funding?
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if maybe someone from the Lisbon Emergency or on the board can actually maybe enlighten how that process actually works, or if it's even a viable option or solution. I mean, I actually haven't participated in that either.
I'm happy to go ahead and speak to this because we spoke about it at the last workshop. So I know that was brought up as a possible point, and at that time I did reach out. I actually talked to Mr. Quartz and the rest of the folks with the Lisbon EMS to ask if they've ever reached out and done something like that, and I did hear that is something that they tried to contact those folks and didn't get any response one way or another that was favorable. Well, so I know where you're going to go with this, so if you don't mind, give me a minute, Dot. So that I understand that one of the requests from one of the folks in the public was to have somebody from the town, the council or maybe the town manager, reach out specifically to maybe the CEO of one of these organizations to see if maybe we get a little bit more traction that way. And we haven't done that yet. And I think the reason that I know from speaking for myself here that we haven't reached out is because they'll empathize with our situation, but I don't think they're going to be ready to put a whole lot of skin in the game to help us out.
You don't think about something like that, you do it. This is going to be a burden on the taxpayers. As I said, I am totally in favor of them staying in town. We really, really need that service. But this is going to be a burden on the taxpayers. Our sewer bills have gone up. Our water bills are going up. Gas and oil prices are going up. There's only so much that the taxpayers you can put a burden on them. There's only so much of a burden that you can put on us. We need all the help that we can get. It would be I was going to say it would be really nice, but it's urgent that someone contact Central Maine Medical Center or the other hospital.
St. Mary's, I got you.
Thank you.
No problem.
It's urgent that somebody do it. Like I said, the burden to the taxpayers is going to be a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person. Anybody else? A lot of people here from the public. I can see this topic. Please come on down, sir.
I'm Roger Voigt, 39-year resident. Excuse me, I lost my voice. I'd like to speak on behalf of my friends at Lisbon Emergency. I just would like to have everyone in this room look around, think about your husband, your wife, your children. Just think about that for a minute. Would you not be willing to spend $20, $30 on your rent or I'm sorry, your taxes to save their lives? The only reason I'm here tonight is because of Lisbon Emergency's rapid response on the spot within 10 or 15 minutes. It's the only reason I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Please step right up. Anybody else? Yep.
Mike Robitel, I've been a resident of the town of Lisbon for 40 some odd years. Yeah, something like that.
Did you forget how old you are, sir?
I don't know. I don't want to say it. Dot, may I address Dot?
Please.
Dot, one of the things that was put out was a request for proposals, and services replied to that. And one of the services that replied to that was United Ambulance. United Ambulance is owned by the hospitals, and they could not provide the in-town coverage that was requested for the request for proposals. So in essence, we did go to the hospitals for a service because United Ambulance is owned by the hospitals. There's 5 hospitals that own them. So their service, in essence, did put in an answer. And they can provide, if you're willing to wait for a response from Russell Street and Lewiston, which is going to be 20 to 30 minutes. So I guess, in essence, there was yes, we didn't go to the CEO of the hospitals, but the hospital's based ambulance service did answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. New topic, Dot? Just following the rules, ma'am.
Asking permission to speak.
Sure.
30 minutes for response is not acceptable when lives are at stake. Minutes count when lives are at stake. A heart attack, so many things. Minutes count. I'm sure United Ambulance does a good job, but where I am on School Street, I see Lisbon Ambulance go by just about every day. They do a terrific job, and their response is very good.
I don't want to speak for the subcommittee, but I guess I will. That is the response that we actually provided based on the information that we got from the RFPs, which brought the dialogue back to actually working with dialogue within Lisbon EMS itself, not as an RFP, which was the second alternative. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a very fair assessment. I'll take it one step further and say that throughout this whole process, I want to go ahead and commend Lisbon EMS on their professionalism. I know it's a very tough thing for them to do, to have to go ahead and do some and take a look at their internals and say we need to go ahead and do some things and think outside of the box because they want to continue to provide the service. One thing I get from them is that none of them do this because they're getting rich at doing it. They do it because they love to serve their community and they love what they do. And it comes through in every conversation I had with these folks. They're passionate about making sure that people are safe and the safety level in this community is there. So it's a tough process, never easy to talk about this stuff, but I'll echo a lot of what I've already heard already, that those folks are extremely professional and we're lucky to have them. So I think it was pretty evident throughout this process.
If I could, I wasn't part of the subcommittee, or I came into this kind of late as getting into council just recently. Following it from the outside, it was kind of interesting because we actually have a community that anytime you have a survey of what the community wants, and the 2 things always on top of the list is first responders, safety, and education. And I don't think we've ever asked a question to community before and got a response other than that. And usually the idea of their safety and their ability to take care of their loved ones, quickly, has always been one of the first things that people don't mind spending tax dollars on. So when this actually came out front of the council, I sat through a lot of the meetings, and there was a lot of dialogue. I give a lot of credit to the people on the council that actually served on subcommittee and along with Lisbon Emergency, because there was a lot of there was a lot of communication. So from this discussion tonight, I hope no one in the town actually goes thinking this was actually a very short-lived process, or actually without a lot of dialogue and a lot of digging. I think there's actually been a lot of information and probably not a whole lot of stones unturned, trying to find out if they can do it more reasonably or if this can be done more effectively. I think the council actually has done its due diligence along with Lisbon Emergency, because they've been very open in this process to try to figure out if there's other ways to do it cheaper or more efficient. And at the end of the day, I mean, as the council goes, because the council will have to vote at some point to actually allow for the funding of this, I think myself, I mean, I'll be able to go in this and make a pretty clear decision based on a couple things. One, is there a need from the community? I don't think anybody in this room will say there's not a need for someone to actually have life-saving, the ability to have life-saving support if needed, or actually call 911 and expect someone to show up in a reasonable amount of time. The time factor is huge. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody in the room's ever called 911 with a loved one that's having a medical emergency, but 5 minutes is like 5 hours, 10 minutes is like a lifetime. If you had to wait 30 minutes, I'm not sure how that would actually play out, but it would be pretty dramatic. So I don't think it's going to be very hard to make a decision on how we move on this as we go forward as far as a counselor. That's why we actually asked for this meeting tonight, just to make sure the public was not left in the dark, but very aware of why the decision was made and if there was any concerns. Being out in the town asking people, I haven't heard anybody that's yet said that we don't need it. You know, we don't need the service. I think a lot of people ask, are we doing the best thing financially? And I think it's been pretty much proven that we can do it with a lot more money, or we could actually try to keep the path and work as a working relationship and actually partnership to actually make this move forward. With that partnership being said, I know the council has actually worked with the group, and now moving forward, the council or the town is actually going to have an opportunity to sit and actually be in the front row, making decisions and guiding along to make sure that the community is actually well served. So, I mean, unless there's someone that actually has something that's new and relevant, it's really hard. I mean, I hate to think that the council has actually already made this decision, but this is a process that's been going on quite some time, and it's only fairness to the Lisbon Emergency that decisions made fairly quickly so they can work on their financials moving forward. So I'm not sure how the council is going to play this out as far as for when they're actually going to take a vote or how that process is going to work. I'm not sure if that's really been kind of worked through, but I think it's going to happen fairly quickly. So if there is anybody from the community that actually has any other questions that are not here tonight, feel free to contact the council or Diane or anybody from Lisbon Emergency, and I'm sure that they can answer any questions prior to going through this. So thank you.
Thank you. On that, I'm glad to see the number of people that actually took the time. I'm assuming this is one of the reasons that you're all sitting here tonight. One of the things that we've had dialogue since this first came up in the July timeframe is, I don't want to say indifference in the community, but people not even aware that's even potential that this may going away could be a reality. We've talked candidly with Lisbon Emergency through this process. What do you need from us and what time frame? The time frame, they need a commitment from us by July 1st to be able to move this forward for the next coming year. Same discussion associated with Bowdoin. We look at this as we can't afford to lose any more dance partners. It's a reality associated with that. But our interest for both communities is to do right by the people that we represent. So that's the grand sum here. I'm appreciating everybody that took the time out. If you got anything else to be able to hear it, I'd love to hear it from the public side because you're on the public record here. If not, I'll close the public hearing. Anybody else? Closed. Moving on, Twyla.
Audience participation and response to agenda items is next.
Anybody have anything they'd like to address to the council on any agenda item tonight? Please step forward. Seeing none, we'll close that one.
The next item is the consent agenda.
Yep.
Order 2018-15. Unless anybody would like to remove an item, you can do so now. It would be to approve the accounts payable and payroll warrants, municipal accounts payable and payroll warrants number 83 for $10,951.01, number 84 for $6,152.27, number 85 for $201,500 $14.37. Number 86 for $17,671.21. Number 87 for $7,928.56. And number 88 for $541,314.97. The school accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 1038 for $376,212.14. And 1039 for $377,876.24. Number 1040 for $13,186.35. Number 20 for $710.18. And number 1814, which is 1814, for $164,895.67, plus the minutes of January 16, 2018, and to set a liquor license and special entertainment public hearing for February 20 for the Flux Restaurant, along with approval and authorization for the town manager to sign the Maine Downtown Network's annual letter of agreement.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
You did all the heavy lifting, though.
She's gonna need an inhaler, I think.
All in favor.
Order passed, 6-0.
Moving right on.
And under council orders, ordinances, and resolutions, Order 2018-16 to assign the name for E911 between 93 and 109 Ridge Road.
Who's speaking on behalf of this one? I saw it in the packet, but refresh our memory. What's the name?
This wasn't approved.
It's not an approved name by 911, E911 standards. Is it Tipiak Lane? If I'm pronouncing that right. So the recommendation at this point would be to have Mr. Sullivan make another recommendation for this lane, since that doesn't qualify.
I need a motion to.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
6-0. Approved.
Thank you.
Order 2018-17, the MDOT Construction Over Limit Permit and two-party agreement, and the three-party partnership agreement.
Anything changed from last year on that one? It's the same thing we did, basically Route 9 corridor, correct?
Right.
Right.
Any changes here?
Just the amounts gone up.
Surprise.
Ryan Leach, Public Works Director. It's the over limit permit is the same standard boilerplate they do every
Right.
year, and then the 2 and the 3-party agreements are for the overlay project on 196. The funding levels increased, as we discussed, based on the intersection improvements at 9 and the high school. The only real change. I don't know if actually the 3-party agreement hadn't been brought
Discussed
forward.
at that point. I don't remember that either.
So there's a 3-party agreement and a 2-party agreement, which didn't make any sense. But we signed a 3-party one, obligating the funds, and then we have to. The state has to, and the town signs the 2-party one, where we basically agree to pay the state.
Okay. Any other questions of Ryan on content? I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item?
Order 2018-18 to schedule a sewer ordinance workshop for February 13 at 6 p.m.
Would like to present the draft ordinance at a workshop on February 13th. It's quite an extensive ordinance, and there's a lot of changes. So we really ought to do this in a workshop.
Who's doing the presentation?
Annalise from Ulver will be here for
That's what it
that.
is. Okay.
And then the plan would be at our next council meeting to do the first reading, and then the second reading after that. So this will take effect in before April.
She was the one who did the presentation last time around, too,
Yes.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
I recognize.
And that'll go out with the regular packet, so we'll have anything to be able to.
We'll actually send the draft ordinance out on Friday to you,
Perfect.
because it's an off meeting night, so
Yes.
this is the only thing
Oh,
that
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
be doing.
I
And
wasn't-
set it for 6
catch the date.
o'clock. Yep.
Anybody have issue with
That
the date? Get me before I commit to somebody else. Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
You guys can arm wrestle.
You can have it.
Got it.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you.
Order 2018-19, the natural gas upgrades for the library and fire station.
Ryan Layton, Public Works Director again. We're back to the discussion about natural gas supply for the Lisbon Library and the Lisbon Falls Fire Station. If you recall, back in, I believe it was September, we had some bids that we received on boiler replacement for the Falls Fire Station and burner upgrades for the Lisbon, for the library. And then we had put out to bid prices for excavation assistance, basically for Unitil, so we could provide the open trench for the gas company to install their gas line up Union Street and then partially down Main Street to be able to supply up to the fire station. We didn't receive any bids at that time, and I discussed based on the season, it was bad timing. At this point, we'd like to go back out to bid for replacement, again, of the boiler and the burner upgrade, as well as the excavation assistance. In the packet, I included the ranges of bids that we had received, and based on the E.T. Smith Hose Company project being much less than we originally designated funds for, along with the funds we already did designate, I think we have adequate funding in the town buildings budget to cover any of the potential shortfalls based on the numbers that we had the first time around.
May I, please? Thank you, sir. Ryan, again, a lot of this was before I actually came on council. I did catch part of it as it was going through. Are both boilers in a need of upgrade, regardless if it was natural gas or not?
I think the Falls Fire Station, yes, based on the input that we got leading up to putting the projects out to bid. The library was determined that a burner replacement would be adequate. If money was no object, I'd say let's replace them both with, new, modern, high-efficiency condensing gas boilers. But again, we're trying to work within budgets that we discussed in the past. So I think that you would be, the boilers would probably be roughly the same size for a guess, and I think you'd be looking at just whatever the difference between 8,700 and 26,000 is.
I guess the question I had was just, with people discussing the project and not discussing the project is the idea of start looking at a project, $50,000 to $70,000, and part of that mainly just to switch to natural gas is the efficiency. How long of a payback is it? I mean, as far as for what we burn there, basing on what we're paying now versus the idea what gas would be. I'm just wondering if this is something that we'll see something that would be like, within a several-year payback, or if this is something that actually is going to take. I'm just wondering if the life of the buildings, if something was to change with one of the buildings down the road. I mean, is this a project that we put a lot of money into now that may not outlive what the payback is, you think? Or I guess the question is how much money we're putting in just to get the natural gas versus the idea of just getting the efficiency from updating the heating, I guess is the concern.
I'd have to get an answer to that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to think that we could put everything natural gas, but as prices change with natural gas and propane and oil, I mean, the idea of just the $20,000 to $30,000 of digging up the road, how long does it take to pay that back? And the efficiency, I guess, was just a question that someone had asked upon me, and I couldn't give them that answer. But I mean, I don't know what the town pays for natural gas right now. It's probably pretty reasonable compared to oil or propane, but that fluctuates, it seems, quite a bit too. But
And I know the idea behind this was to get it ready so that when we do the work up Main Street, we'll be ready to go ahead and it'll just be a matter of plugging into the line after it gets dropped because they'll all be ready to receive. So,
and there was multiple reasons. It was to get, the potential, to branch the natural gas line up in that area, and then to be able to provide the additional coverage to, the rest of downtown as well. Because, I mean, the ultimate plan there would be you bring the line up Union, you'd end up continuing it up Maple, and then down behind all the businesses on the other side of the street.
and may I
Keep going.
And I know a couple of our downtown meetings, there was a lot of other business owners down on the opposite side of the street that actually was hoping to get, let's face it, if you run a laundromat or something like that, natural gas is probably not a bad ticket. And again, I'm not sure if that's even an option, but I'm just kind of wondering if we've actually reached out to those businesses, because I know if we have enough potential customers, they would probably do that line for free if they seen the outcome of it would potentially worthwhile, you mean, but I'm not sure if we've really reached out to see how many people up on the other end, if we were to bring it up and branch out. Again, I know that's not a position that you
Well,
actually...
it's the discussions we've had with Unitil, though. That's
Yeah.
why that's the plan, is that
Yeah.
they've already had initial conversations. It's my understanding that, there is the desire for folks on the opposite side of the street from where it is now to be able to have that option. And this was, the step one of the means to an end for that side of the street as well.
You went the same sort of path that I did with the boiler replacement. I knew the fire department, that was a replace, so we'd be getting a more efficient boiler. Looking at paybacks on that, the internet's a scary place. The estimate is, all things equal, it's about a 10-year payback on that. I'm not sure in the library's case if that's statistically there. We're going to have the same efficiency of that boiler and we're just switching over to gas, if that would be less or more. Then the issue I was having was the same discussion associated with the excavation work for adding 30 grand on that for a payback. But my wife reminded me that it was the other people in the area that were actually impacting because of the way that we had to reconfigure instead of not being able to make the turn around Main Street, which was the first go-around. Ryan has put together a plan here. It is roughly 30 grand higher, but depending on what estimates come in. Is there concern winter for bids, or what time frame are we expecting the work to be completed to get a more reasonable bid when it's not peak demand time?
Well,
What's your completion date?
I haven't even thought that far in advance.
Right now you're looking for permission, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, part of it too is I don't know what Unitil's schedule is at this point. We originally, if everything had fallen in line like
Right.
we wanted to in the fall, then it would have happened, within a
And
month.
then that
basically,
snag with the excavation caused the
Right.
monkey wrench, right?
And but at this point, I think those are all the things that we'll have to iron out. It's just the question is, do you want us to proceed or shelve this until after budgets or what? But I think the can find out the additional information for sure about payback, because I'm thinking off that we've had just the upgrades we made at the Public Works the first time around. I know our payback was pretty quick,
Yeah.
and I want to say that even at MTM, what we've done there, I think the payback was really quick. But I'd have to confirm what
Just
really
burned
quick
a lot of
means.
oil at MTM.
He's right behind you. Does it help us? Yeah. Some of that the boiler, or is it more of the upgrades for all the window doors and the weatherization that you've done at the same time?
Probably, I think,
all
but-
the above. Right.
Yeah, Jeremy,
Please.
even with the questions I've asked, I think it's still reasonable to go out to bid. You got to put it out there, see if anybody even has an interest in doing it, and see what you get for numbers. Because everybody right now is bidding probably for spring projects, if not summer projects. So,
Well, based on experience last time with the estimates we received from our provider at the time, and all the bids came in higher, including his, I really would much rather just put it out to bid, get hard numbers, and then have a decision. And we either see if it's
Work
not
out the
something we do
details.
now and do it out of the next budget, then we cross that bridge when we get there. But
I would make a motion to put it out to bid.
I have a motion.
Second.
Any other questions of Ryan before? All in favor then?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ryan.
Next item?
Order 2018-20, the Dingley TIF Credit Enhancement Agreement extension, and to set a public hearing date.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. I just want to kind of go back a little bit as far as on Ryan's conversation regarding natural gas. We also want to keep in mind that Union Street within the sidewalk project is also taking place this spring. So,
Thank you. I remember we're going to have the street open, doing it at the same time frame.
Yep.
Right.
what you have before you is Dingley Press request. Basically, they have put in, or they're actually in the process of putting in an expansion of a new equipment for over $20 million, which is going to be great for the community because it shows their commitment to stay here in Lisbon. And Dingley Press is our largest employer here in Lisbon. The TIF basically expires this year. It was a TIF that was put together for 25 years. The extension of 5 years will bring it to the maximum of 30 years. You can only have 30 years on the TIF. So with that, basically we're asking council as far as to set a public hearing date to look at the Dingley TIF of expanding it for out 5 more years to the life of the term. Also with that, I'll be looking at council as we look at the development program. The current development program that has been approved is strictly for the Economic Development Office, which is for my office. This is an opportunity by amending the TIF, if we go out 5 years, that we can look at the development plan, and it would be up to council if you want to continue to use those funds to pay for the Economic Development Office or think of other ways of expending those funds that come from the TIF. As you can see, we currently, just for the amount of this year, will be receiving $163,000 coming in from the Dingley TIF. Also within the new equipment, you're not going to see nothing change as far as within the ratios of the TIF because the value is in the equipment, which comes under the Betty program. Under the Betty program, that goes to the state, and then half of that comes back to the town. So in my conversation with the assessor, with the estimation of looking at $230,000 that would coming back directly from the town just on the equipment itself. Neil Poston with Dingley TIF is here, along with his legal counsel, Jim Safi, and so if you have any questions, they are here to answer.
I know in the last TIP discussion with Kelly Park, it was, what is the revenue that we're going to shield from the state funding for education and county? Do we have any of that in this?
In this one, Jim, have you put together any of those? Jim's been working as far as on some of the figures in that regard, putting the TIF together, and I'm not sure he can answer.
So Jim Safi, Pierce Atwood, working with Dingley on their TIF proposal. So was the question the amount of TIF revenue to be generated through the extension, or the amount of sheltering?
Sheltering.
From avoiding the
sheltering,
cost?
because one of the benefits associated with that are those 2 key points.
Yep, sure. I have not finished the actual TIF extension application, but roughly speaking, you can expect that the sheltering is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% or so of the sheltered dollars. So with the 50-50 split and with
right.
the TIF revenues being roughly 130, so 260,000, you might have sheltering benefits of somewhere around $100,000 to $125,000, a year accompanying each of that. I'll know more once I actually have the schedule, but that's as a rule of thumb, that might be a rough estimate for you.
Perfect. Same hit the key benefits associated with this to both the community and the beneficiary. If you could highlight those just for the public, that'd be great.
Sure. Basically, it's taking the same. Unless you want, who is that directed to?
No, you're both standing right there. You're doing a fine job.
Sure. Yeah. So it's the same arrangement. There's 5 years that's eligible to be left under a TIF program, and so as part of the expansion they're doing now, they came down and approached and said, it's possible to continue the TIF both for the company's benefit, but also to continue the sheltering and the TIF benefits for the town for the remaining eligible 5 years. I would, just in terms of timing, because just to explain, it does expire, oddly enough, on March 28th of this year, and that's just running back to the date the state
right.
approved the original TIF. So if you're inclined to go forward and schedule the public hearing, it would be important just in terms of the process of coming to you, having you review it, and if you approve it, to get it to the state, have them approve it all by March 27th. So just so
right.
you see some of the time frames we're all kind of working under. But
when did this come to light? I'm just curious, so we'll kind of get an understanding. So understanding that's the 28th is the expiration point.
Right.
When did this kind of come to light to say, okay, we need to start moving on this, and why are we so tight against the deadline?
Yeah, so I think that for the town, the company was kind of examining on the back burner of the TIF, but really a lot of their efforts and energy were really focused on the project. And
So it's just one of the details of those kind. I get it.
I mean, it was kind of like, well, we know it's there, and in some ways, because TIFs often work off fiscal years, the thinking was, well, it would probably run until June 30th, and so there wasn't really. It was only when we actually started to come and talk to Tracy and look at the actual history of the TIF, and it goes back to '93, and there was some even confusion on the state's side. Okay. When did it start? And it took a bit of effort for me to kind of work through the state. It's still a little bit ambiguous. Their guidance to me was to be most cautious. Let's use the March 28 date as kind of the starting point and the ending point. So
I as well has contacted DECD, and that was the same response that I had gotten. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a couple more questions, if we could. The grant extension, or I should say the TIF extension, I mean, that could happen regardless whether the additional equipment was put in or not. I mean, that's really not basing it. Is it new equipment based in that factor at all, or could in essence, if there was no new equipment, the TIF still could be extended, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And
The equipment was just, it kind of, again, by the expansion of it out, the equipment does not, that new value will not go for the TIF at all, is because it doesn't qualify for that. That will qualify under the Betty program. So it's only on the other value. So that's why we'd be looking at similar to the same amount of money that we're getting now would be similar to that based upon how the taxes go and, you know, and the valuations through the assessor. But outside of that, none of the equipment is just, the value is all in within the equipment that doesn't qualify.
And just another question, just to the community, because they're listening. Is this the new investment in equipment? Is that something ongoing right now, or when is that?
Yes, it's ongoing now. I've toured the facility, and I'm actually going to have Neil. Why don't you come up, because it's really good for you to understand as far as by them making this investment. It actually keeps the business here. It keeps over 300 employees here, and it also makes them competitive to what's going on outside.
Thank you.
Did I explain
I
that?
think you just said it for me. But that's essentially what we're asking for, and the case we're presenting for that is that our presence in the community and the investment we're making to stay here and to stay in the printing business, which has been a fairly challenged industry for the past decade or so. So, you know, the extension will help us do that and help us complete this project and grow into it. And that's really what we're looking for. So
That's great. And the reason I ask the question, just as a community, I mean, it's always nice to know who our partners are and realize that people investing in the town, it makes a big statement, you know, for not just big business, but small business also. So thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Take a motion?
Make the motion.
Before you make the motion, we put in there public hearing on March 6th, but you can do it sooner if you'd like.
Yes.
It's totally up to you.
I would recommend putting that forward on the next meeting, just to
Okay.
give us a little more cushion.
Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take a second on that.
Yep. You got it.
That'd be the 20th, February 20th?
Yes,
Yep.
February 20th, please.
February 20th. Thank you.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Looking that way. I'm used to looking over there to look at you.
I bet you. Are you in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Next item, Twyla.
Ordinance 2018-21, repeal Chapter 50, Article 2, Division 1, Section 5045, winter parking. This is a first reading and requires a roll call vote.
Who's going to speak to this one?
So based on the discussion at the last meeting regarding the winter parking between midnight and 6 a.m. from November 1st to April 1st each year, we got the consensus or got the feeling from council where we don't really have any violators, but if we do, what we can do is just the winter parking ban. And we've got some people that would like to park on the street during those hours when we don't have a storm and they're having to park in their neighbors' dooryards and so forth. And we really don't have any history per se on the books where there are any violators, so we feel that just repealing this ordinance would work. And we can still get the job done by doing the winter parking ban during the storms.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So basically, what this actually does is, right now we have a rule at a certain date of the year, regardless of the weather, it could be 80
Right.
degrees out for that month.
Exactly.
At that particular date, there's no more parking on town roads. And this isn't just on downtowns, this is town-wide. So
Townwide.
side roads, or wherever you're parking. That would actually put no more limit to the idea of where you could park, whether it's summer or winter.
Right.
But what it would put in place, the idea that the same obligations would be there for a person if there was as of today, I mean, the alert went out saying there was a
Right.
parking ban, meaning that if your car was out in the road, when the snowplows came by, they would have it towed, and that would actually still be covered under what we have
Right.
for a written rule.
And Ryan and I talked about it for quite a while, and we tried to think of any negatives by doing away with this. And, we even thought about during the day when we're doing snow removal, but it doesn't prohibit them during the day. It's just between 12 midnight and 6 a.m., and typically we're not doing snow removal at that time, only in the 2 downtown areas, and that's already protected under the winter parking ban. So I don't see a need for it, but as you know, you do away with something and something's going to crop up, and we can always put it back on the books. But I think the winter parking ban, as we post it, when we have storms, I think that will cover us.
And as a lot of these things that have written rules in town, most people that actually get stung by it don't understand that the rules are there because they don't actually, before they come into town, go read all the ordinances that we have. But the idea of the parking ban and people understanding that when there is a storm or after a storm that you can't park on the roadway, I think would be, people understand that a little bit more, I think, hopefully.
Ryan, did we tow anybody last year? Was there enforcement at all?
Ryan, you've changed.
I assumed you would actually get it towed, right? Is that coming from PW or police?
It'd be from
both,
usually
right?
What happens is Public Works will call us. and
That's
we'll
what I
come over and try to
assumed. That's
make
what I said.
Contact with the owner if possible. I don't think we actually ever towed anybody. We probably had 3 or 4 tickets throughout the.
That whole season last year.
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I knew you would.
I'll second it.
Any other questions? First, roll
I'm good.
call.
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor Crawford?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
And we have 6 in favor, no opposed. Ordinance pass.
Next item, Twyla?
Ordinance 2018-22 to amend Chapter 10, Article 4, Itinerant Vendor Ordinance. This is a first reading. A roll call vote is required. So what we've done is we've added definitions of what an itinerant vendor is and what a flea market is. We felt that that was important because it was not currently in the ordinance. And then we added a section for violation and penalties. And we feel the way we put this together, and enforcement, this will help with some of the issues that we're facing right now in Lisbon with itinerant vendors and not coming to Twyla for licenses, and also the issues that we see during Moxie Festival.
Anybody have question on content?
Mr. Chair, may I? I guess, again, some of this started prior to me coming on, and was this actually re-looked at just because of the fee schedule that was more of a broad brush before, that everybody fell underneath one umbrella, and now we've actually broken it up so it would actually be more fairly feed to people coming in?
Yep. We did. We've realigned those, and also we've added temporary stands as well, because there seems to be a lot of temporary businesses popping up here and there throughout the summer, and they're not coming to get any type of licenses. And that's a problem, especially if it's a food stand, because they have to be inspected. So, yeah.
So, under that logic, then, is it 3 lawn sales a year or something? There was where is that language again? Anybody that this doesn't. What's that?
That's a different ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay, but to my point, where does that other ordinance kick in before where this one picks up, is what I would say. So there are people that can still have the occasional sale before this additional language comes into play to identify them as an itinerant vendor, correct?
Yard sales are on their own property. This is not. This deals with itinerant
Commercial
vendors that
space.
are roaming around,
Okay.
using someone else's space.
So none of this applies to
Yeah,
your own
landowner
personal
permission.
property?
No.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Okay.
other than the person's permanent place of business or place of legal voting residence.
Okay. That's where I was kind of trying to land to.
I think if you put wheels on the cart and you put it on your property, and then it falls into a definition. We licensed a gentleman on 196 at one time for barbecue on his own property, but there are certain qualifications for that.
Right.
It was a commercial business, though, even though it was on his own property, right? Or
Yeah. And he had had the license for that too, correct?
Right, but we're not talking about those
Right,
yard
right.
sales.
Right.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
So if my neighbor owns some property on Main Street in Lisbon Falls during Moxie Festival, they say, Norm, feel free to set up your 5 coolers full of Moxie, and you can sell your Moxie, because I'm going to have a yard sale that day. How does that work?
You have to come get a license.
I got to get a license.
It's not your
It's not his own property.
So
It's your own house.
Does he have to get the license, or does...
a resident. That's my question, too. Yeah, exactly.
Or does the
Who's
owner of the
responsible
property?
for the licensing? I'm doing the selling, but it's not my property.
It would
So
be
because
you.
I'm an itinerant vendor, I have to do the actual.
You would have to.
Okay.
Is that correct, Dan? That's what yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Clarify.
Mr.
Crystal
Chairman.
clear.
Please.
No doubts.
So in this, just so there's no questions, so we're looking at fees and no one else is an opportunity
Oh,
to look at that paper. There's actually no fees that are going up.
No, they're
Okay.
going down,
All
actually.
fees are going down. Just so people know, I mean, we're looking at fees, changing the schedule, but it's
Right,
actually all
right.
down, not up, just so there's any concerns. And the last one that's on there, the junkyard license, now, is that something that's just handled in a different location now for the permitting process, or?
It just got added in there by mistake.
Okay, I was just kind of curious.
State
It seems an
statute.
odd place to have it, yeah.
Yeah, and the fees just don't belong there.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a state statute that governs all that.
Cleaning it up.
okay, good.
Am I just
Yeah.
overlooking the penalty schedule?
104. Well, the penalty is
105?
105,
question.
bottom page.
How would this work if an individual was part of a nonprofit organization? The organization itself is the one doing the selling, but they're using that person's residence.
Says the council may waive.
I'm not talking about fees. I'm talking about who would it fall on the individual who is part of the organization, where it's their residence, or would the organization itself have to take out a permit?
Let's ask Dan. Dan, did you hear the question?
I would think
He
you
was
already
zoned out.
mentioned, but-
He's looking it up.
No, he didn't.
Linda does
No, he
speak.
didn't.
No.
If you can just run the scenario by me again.
A
It's
nonprofit
the
organi-
nonprofit's
Yep.
the seller.
Yeah, the nonprofit's the seller, but they're using an individual who is part of that organization, primary residence, whatever, maybe, to do the selling. How would that work?
I mean, I think because it's the organization that is doing the selling, I think they would be considered an itinerant vendor under the ordinance. So they should be getting a license, but we have the ability to waive fees.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to clear.
Full to waive it.
Yeah.
The penalty, not less than 250, no more than 1,500. It's a pretty wide swath. How are those being determined? Because it's a per.
Yeah, I came up with the 250. I mean, some of your other ordinances, start out at 1,000 and they go up to 3,000. I thought 250
latitude.
Yeah, 250. It gives some range that the code enforcement officer or the police department can work within in determining, the appropriate fine depending on the circumstances. So.
That's what I wanted to understand a little bit better. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Any other questions? I will take a motion.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
That's a
Roll
first
call.
reading, sorry.
All right, ready?
It's a roll call, right?
Counselor La Rochelle
Yes.
and Counselor Crawford.
Yes.
Counselor Albert.
Yes.
Counselor Colby.
Yes.
Counselor Ward.
Yes.
And Counselor Lund?
Yes.
We have 6 yeas, 0 nays, and order passed.
Next, Twyla?
Is ordinance 2018-23 to amend Chapter 50, Buildings and Building Regulations. So a first reading and a roll call vote's required.
What are we cleaning up here?
Dennis can answer that.
I think we're
Council,
we have no control over it,
Dennis
but-
Douglas, Code Enforcement Officer. So essentially, received a memo from the state the other day. They passed the 2015 MUBEC code, which is the Maine Unified Building and Energy Code, and they gave municipalities 90 days from their adoption date, which was January 23rd of this year. We have 90 days to essentially adopt the new code. So back in 2011, it was mandated for all municipalities over 4,000, population of 4,000, to have to adopt the MUBEC standards, and that referenced the 2009 International Building Code with their own exceptions and whatnot. Our existing ordinance is actually based on 2003 International Building Code, so we actually haven't been in compliance for a long time. With that said, I enforce what I'm mandated to enforce, regardless of what the ordinance says. So this is just essentially to get rid of the existing building code ordinance and bring into effect what our new mandate is. So you'll see in your packets, I don't know if you got them, is all of the MUBEC stuff.
Yep.
You can go down through and read it. Essentially, the ordinance doesn't have to have all that in it. It's just going to refer to the MUBEC standard as our building code standard. And if somebody wants the code books, they can buy them and go from there. So
I would bet to say that by moving to this, it's going to raise the standards at which we would.
They're already in
the
effect.
2015 International Building Code, which is based off from, doesn't have a lot of changes, nothing substantial in the building code world from 2009. MUBEC is its own animal. That's Maine essentially says the International Building Code is fine for most people, but we want to change some things to make it Maine's code. So 90% of the existing building code, international building codes, are still there, and they have their own exceptions, which I think in that paperwork you can kind of go down through and see what they pulled out. A lot of the stuff has to do, we have our own Maine plumbing code, so they took the whole section of the plumbing code out of the international building code, exempt that, and bring in the Maine uniform plumbing code. So things like that, just to make it conform to what Maine wants to see. It is interesting, they did put a section in there on tiny homes. So if anybody's interested in that, not for tonight, but they did actually make some provisions to try to figure out how to put that square peg in a round hole on tiny homes when it comes to building code standards. So I'm going to be bringing that up to planning board, showing some of the stuff they did on that, because it's been a topic of discussion at the planning board level. So Thursday night I'll show them what they're doing on tiny homes anyways. But so essentially this is just to bring us current to the existing 2015 International Building Code and the newly adopted MUBEC standards. So and if you don't want to do it, you have no choice, I guess.
I was going to say, one of those things is would be involved.
Once you get our population under 4,000, you don't have a choice.
I'd make a motion that we adopt it.
Need a
I'll
second.
second it.
Roll call?
All right. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor Crawford?
Yes.
And Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Next item, Twyla?
Ordinance 2018-24 to amend Chapter 30, Article 3, Park Regulations, Section 88-5, Special Regulations. It's the first reading. Roll call vote required.
So what we've added to this ordinance under the alcohol possession is private events or private gatherings sponsored by an individual person or persons such as a wedding in which alcohol is served by a licensed establishment with an off-premises catering permit. Before, it was just limited to charitable nonprofit organizations, but should we want to, if somebody wants to have a wedding like out at Beaver Park, this will allow it now. They still have to come to council for approval, and we've just allowed that part now. So it doesn't exclude everybody.
Which parks does this include?
Any of our parks, gardens, trails. And also, we added language that the town may require as a condition of allowing alcohol at a gathering or event under this section that a police officer be present at the expense of the applicant.
You see any issues with that, Mark? No, in general parks.
That part at all.
Big fan, right?
Not me, man. Not me.
My favorite people.
Right.
I don't have any issues with that at all. It could be another way we open the doors to Beaver Park. We've already had weddings out there before.
Right.
And I expect we're going to have more in the future. Even at MTM, people have been married on the pavilion.
Has anybody broached that question associated with having caterer or bar come in for something like a Beaver Park?
I've had to turn alcohol away before, yeah.
It just seems to me it's we're missing the chance to promote a perfect location for something as simple as that.
Right. As long as it's managed well.
Right, which is the spirit of what this is actually crafted.
Right.
Any other questions of Mark? Or topic in general? If not, I'll take a motion.
I think it's roll call, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way maybe we could put in that as a condition of allowing alcohol at these events, security must be present, and if not, then a police officer must be? Because
Isn't that what they just...
Hold on. You got a thought?
Yeah, I don't think it's law enforcement needs to be in a private event. If they don't have their own security, yes. But require their own private security.
I don't think it's actually mandated. I think what
it's mandated right here.
It says the town council
may
require.
require.
You could amend it to say that a private security or a police officer, just to make it clear that the town council has discretion.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If you want to have 300 people, maybe you need to require something, but for 100 people, maybe you say, okay, just hire a private security person.
So security or
and if the town requires something, then if they can't show that they've hired their own private security, then they will hire our officers.
Just a thought.
No,
That makes sense.
No, I think that's a good idea.
I say may require, so it does give the option for the council to take every situation.
Yeah. Want one for a
every
wedding,
time.
but if
We're
we
gonna
have a
take
big event that's going to have 300 people,
Each one's
you
going to be a
definitely
case by case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll fill out the application, you'll look at it, and if you have to, you kick it to us. Is that the way the mechanism would work?
Right.
And working with some of these in the past, just some of the events that we've looked into this, I mean, the idea of having have that off-premise liquor license is very stringent when it comes to liability insurance, because the insurance goes back to the person serving the alcohol. There's a lot of restrictions that go along with that, so it isn't just anybody that's going to show up and start serving alcohol.
Right.
But every time, but if somebody is, even for a wedding, they're going to have to come to you in advance for approval.
Yep.
So you'll know at that time whether you're going to need to have security, whether you're going to kick this next paragraph into.
Yep. Understandable.
If it's 30 people versus 300, makes a difference.
So are we adding that in? Or?
So what you do is you make a motion, if you wanted to add it in, that you adopt it as written, and insert after police officer the words private or private security officer.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably
He
easier
just
to do
did.
it.
Is that
That's his motion.
what you were looking to do?
Yes.
That'd give discretion. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Now the roll call.
All right. Councillor Colby.
Yes.
Councillor Albert.
Yes.
Councillor Crawford.
Yes.
Councillor La Rochelle.
Yes.
Councillor Ward.
Yes.
And Councillor Lunt.
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
It's going to change the men's league end of the year parties, Mark. They don't have to get a permit now. Ain't that the truth?
Next item.
Ordinance 2018-25 to amend Chapter 46, Article 4, Street Lighting, Section 46, 147, Subsection 1. A first reading, roll call vote required.
And again, this is language under D that we added, so that gives you more flexibility on accepting street lights in the village zone.
Anybody have content issues with D or questions? I'll take a motion if not.
I'll make the motion.
I got my second, I heard it too.
Which one?
Either one.
I don't care, yeah, whichever you order.
Who made the
Arm wrestle
motion?
from here.
Okay,
I'm just
Chris.
going to get, I concede. You can go one
Could have
first.
when you were over here.
I know, it was much better. Mission, Chris.
Roll call.
Okay. Counselor Ward?
Yes.
And Counselor Colby?
Yes.
And Counselor Albert?
Yes.
And Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
And Counselor Crawford?
Yes.
And Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
6-0 passed.
Next item?
All right. Order 2018-26, Lisbon Emergency, level of service and funding.
We put this on the agenda in case
Right.
you wanted to make a decision on it where we're working on budget now.
Would be the wishes.
Wait till,
I'll start with the subcommittee representatives sitting here. So what are you guys seeing?
I've been pretty clear about where I'm at. I think the level of service from the public safety, I think we're ready to move. I think we're ready to act. I don't want to speak for Mark, but I know I've heard enough in workshops, and I feel confident that we have a clear picture of what it would look like without, what it looks like with, and what we think needs to happen. So from a public safety perspective, I think the workshop piece is done. We're ready to move.
I would agree. I think we need to direct the town manager to work with the Lisbon Emergency to come up with a actual budget to go into our budget plan for this year. It's coming up fast, so we need to get on that.
Anybody else?
Yep. Is there much of a question about that actual budget? Because I guess there's a couple discussions about the idea of the 5 years out versus the idea, do you actually range at so it's actually more equaled out over the 5 years? I mean, is that kind of the discussion you're talking about, Mark? It's not so much the end dollar, it's more the how it's actually scheduled out.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
And I have a quick question that's not, and I may have missed it, and somebody may have already discussed it, but like it keeps going up every year. It goes up. The first year it goes up 20,000, and then the next year it goes up 50,000, and then we have a ambulance that needs to be replaced in 2 years. What's the average cost of that? Because that's going to get added on to the 199,000, right? If we're I don't know if we are or not.
So, I think that would be a good time to bring in. I can go ahead and quote what I remember from that, but I'd rather hear it from the folks that know it better than myself. Chief, do you want to speak to this?
Chief, if I remember correctly, come on up to the podium, please. But I'm interpreting the 199 as actually inclusive of that ambulance coming on in that year, correct?
Right now, we're using our capital improvement savings to cover us till July 1st.
Yep.
Over the 3 years, we're rebuilding the capital improvement so we can buy and replace our 2001 ambulance.
Yep. With this level that you're talking here includes the replacement of the ambulance that he's asking about, correct?
No other obligation.
No other obligation.
It's
It
not on
addresses
top
that.
of. It's
Right.
included in that number.
Okay.
Then
That's one of the prime reasons that they had to come to us, because they couldn't afford to keep running and buy their capital expenditures.
Just to back it up a little bit, from one of our first discussions in the workshop was some of the challenges they faced, and they talked about the challenges with the older equipment that they had. So we spitballed a bunch of different ways, including looking at the cost of a new bus, because they had been using used buses every time to get themselves through. So we played with a bunch of different scenarios and what that would look like. And so that's why I mentioned it earlier on. I really commended their thinking outside of the box and realizing that they're not coming to us for a blank check. They're still very diligent about how they want to attack this from a funding perspective. And they realize that we're going to want to be part of that oversight piece of it if we're talking about taxpayer dollars. So, yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that they've done a very good job talking about how they're going to be able to get to where they need to be and still maintain the equipment that they have.
One of the feedback
Thank you for
pieces.
answering that question. Appreciate it.
One of the feedback questions that they've fielded throughout the course of this is looking at that trend. What does year 4 mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they've heard that criticism both from us and Bowdoin. Is is that the trend we're expecting to continue to see, or how do we mitigate that to be able to get on? That is a dialogue that they are. That would be to Councillor Lunt's point, looking at making that a more stable number, so it isn't that volatile a number that we have to look at every time we go into the budgets.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
Again, there's been a lot of discussion. This isn't anything that's been actually quickly run into. So, I mean, the idea of us voting on it or actually making an opinion tonight, I don't think is much of a concern. It's not short-sighted. The only couple of concerns that I would have is the idea of the partnership with Lisbon municipality and the ambulance service. It's very difficult to see this far out sometimes when it comes financially. I mean, and I know, listening and sitting with the meetings, that Bowden, along with Lisbon, has a yearly approval and not approval built into this. So, I mean, it actually is specified per year if you continue going on. One of the concerns I had is, after year one, if Bowden decides not to actually come aboard or actually finds another venue, which would be interesting if that was able to do, it probably wouldn't, but if they would, does that $30-some-odd thousand get tacked on somewhere, so to speak? I guess that's all unknown, I realize, but, anytime you're working with multiple partners, if one partner goes away, do the other partners actually absorb that difference, was a kind of concern I had a little bit. Not having a crystal ball, not be able to look in the future. I mean, one of the things I would actually definitely do tonight is I would support it with 100%, but with the idea that the representatives of our community actually just make sure we work year to year and try to forecast that a little bit out. So if there's any big changes that we're not, I just hate making promises 5 years out, not knowing what financials are next year, the year after, because things change. The only constant thing in the world is change. Is that what they say? So I just hope that we do our due diligence and keep forecasting out to make sure that these actually work. And, who knows, maybe things change and things could go down, but it's the idea of just keeping that eyeball out. And from what I've seen, the board actually has a pretty good eye of what's happening, and hopefully they can work with that. I know this isn't something that's come up overnight. It's actually been a while coming. So as long as as long as the community has representatives looking and making sure that the best outcome for the people and the services there, I definitely can support it.
Yes, sir.
New bylaws are government document. Is
Yeah.
that our lawyers right now? We got a lot of feedback from our members. Alan, Norm gave us feedback. It will give Lisbon, or it will give a financially supporting town 3 seats on our board, and the 2 towns can decide who goes on it. Someone from one of those towns will be the chair of our budget committee, and that's a new part of our bylaws is we do have a budget committee.
There's been a lot of work put in this. I do commend everybody's worked on it, because it's been well thought out, as well as can be done anyway.
And one thing to speak to something you had mentioned, because Bowden is a partner that has the yearly renewal option, as do we. If they decide to forego it 1 year and move on, I'm sure that's something from a budgeting perspective. We take a look at number of calls that were budgeted and what the costs associated with that, and try to back that out accordingly, whatever it was, when we make that decision. So that's something that I'm sure we can look at to determine, so that we're not looking at that all of a sudden an additional cost out of nowhere.
Correct. Yep.
But hard to tell. Like you said, no crystal ball, so hard to tell what you're going to anticipate for that. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Anybody else up here? I would like to have this be part of the budget discussion, just like any other department, in that I know it's not a department, but it's at least it gets heard through the workshop process to formalize the level of support that would actually come out of that process. That said, I would even entertain a motion to be able to make that happen here, so they hear it publicly, to be able to put that in play for that public.
Yeah, procedurally, how does this work? We don't put the cart before the horse here. I want to make sure that do we have to?
I think what we would do is actually, to me, my opinion, would be giving support tonight for the management to work this into our budget.
Right.
Yep.
Again, it's not an approval of the budget.
Right.
It's basically just the idea of putting that as a place marker in our budget to approve it as any other department or expenditure.
That was a lovely motion. I need a second for that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you. Next item, Twyla?
Under other business, council committee reports.
School.
So there was no school meeting, but there was a special meeting last night for their budget. I was unable to attend. I was stuck at work. But my understanding is it's the same thing that we've done the last meeting, which is more budget talks. I can get the skinny and bring it back with my next report.
Okay. Planning board, they had a site review that was canceled because the location they're looking at has changed. That actually triggers the new application, so we don't have a valid application for that storefront opening on that, correct?
It's
Please.
Still open.
Yeah.
If he changes location, then the existing.
Correct. If he moves location, it's a new application subject to the moratorium is the point that I was trying to make, right?
Still going back and forth on which way to go.
And he understands that. He was comfortable with that. It's looking to protect his interest moving forward. The other part of that was covered in the, they went to workshop, talked more about updates on the comprehensive plan and key things to be able to wrap that up for a June timeframe for a draft actually coming back. Anything else that you remember on that I missed?
Actually, I think it's actually
Please.
pretty quick.
If I could just remind the public that we do have a survey online for the comprehensive plan, and we've had a good response, but we would really like to know everybody's opinion. Every survey we have done, we've gotten more response, so I think people are getting used to it. It only takes a couple minutes, but please, would like all the residents to take the time to tell us what they're thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Water. Water, Councilor Brunel is actually out tonight. We'll move on. LDC.
There will be a meeting this next Thursday, the 15th. Am I correct? Just want to make sure I got my dates correct. So we'll be here at the town office. If there's any questions or any concerns, you can give me a call or give Tracy a call. This is going to be our what do we do next type of meeting. So we're going to try to actually get some goals to come back to council with. So I'm looking forward to some good things coming up. So if there's a business owner or any member of the community that actually has concerns about the development of Lisbon, and which is a very broad thing, please ask and questions and attend, and hopefully we can actually start the year off moving forward.
Conservation's later in the agenda, so I'll move on. Recreation.
Well, I was supposed to go last night, but due to some work deadlines and a flat tire, that made it impossible. So, I don't know,
Mark?
Chris, did you end up going last night?
Could not go.
You could not go.
Mark's here, though.
But Mark is here.
You guys missed a good time.
Hey, you know what? Anything was better than sitting on the side of the road with a flat tire.
Well, we just kind of briefly.
Please, Mark.
All right, Mark Stevens, Parks and Recreation Director. Basically, we met last night for a couple hours. We went over staffing goals for this budget year, also programming goals and facility goals. We also reviewed a couple items. One was the Winterfest, talked about how successful that was, and went over the current budget.
Thank you, sir.
May I?
Yes, you
show
may.
where you are with the project. I mean, we as a council, we're asking for the committees to come forward with some goals, or the chair to come forward, or whoever representing the committee for this upcoming year. Is that kind of the goals that you're working at through that, you think, or is there other new project type goals? I was kind of hoping to,
We have our department goals, and then the Conservation Commission and the Recreation Committee, they have their goals as well.
Yeah.
But you'll see that they're pretty much aligned.
Cool.
Most of the time.
They'll be preparing those to bring them forward to council.
March 6th.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anxious to see.
Library.
Nothing new to report.
Going back to what Councilor LaRochelle was bringing, I like that the departments and the committees are actually preparing the goals. The intent here is to increase the communication and bring the committees into that, so your priorities, your goals are heard by us, that we can actually help assist and do, as Mark says, is are they aligned with others, or are they duplicating efforts? So appreciate the dialogue that's happening on those. Town manager.
Nothing to report tonight.
Conservation is up.
I'd like to introduce Annika McKirk and Richard Maines. They're both Conservation Commission members, and they're going to go over some of the reports that you have.
Thank you. Annika McKirk, Conservation Commission. You should have something in your packet briefly outlining what we're hoping to accomplish. Starting this year, primarily tackling invasive species here in town. As you'll note in your packet, invasive species are an ecological and economic concern, and the more preparation we take before a problem really gets out of hand, as it were, it does lessen the price point. So our goal is to work with professionals and to determine the extent of the issue, especially focusing on town-owned properties, and then sort of assessing based on what would be the most expensive removal and what type of removal, whether it's chemical or mechanical, and then working backwards, tackling what's easiest and cheapest, and then moving on. Anything to add, Richard? Anything to add?
Richard Maine, member of the Conservation Commission. And as Annika has mentioned, invasive plants are doing damage not only in the south and other parts of New England, but they're doing damage in Lisbon. And there are a couple of invasive plants that are, I call them trees actually. Norway maple is an invasive plant. It's non-native. And what it does is it kills out the sugar maples, it kills out red maples, it kills the grass under the tree canopy, and it changes the forest. Animals, from what I can read, like to eat the bark of the sugar maple and some of the other trees, and Norway maples they stay away from. So it changes the habitat for them as well. We are looking primarily at, first of all, we want to look at town properties, small town public properties that exist, and see what invasive species are there. So, for example, across the street from the high school, there's a small park area, and it contains the gazebo. There's a memorial tree, which is the spruce. By the way, the spruce was decorated this year. I thought it was pretty good, good decorations, and but there are a couple of Norway maples there, and they can begin to crowd in on that. One can crowd in on that tree, and one can crowd in on the gazebo. And they kill the grass, actually kill the grass underneath the canopy. So we're looking to address that problem to begin with. And the memorial tree is the spruce. So we want to make sure that that is kept as a memorial tree and provided for. The other goal, and I wasn't, the second goal is really the implementation of the Beaver Park management plan. It was done in 2011, but in the change of personnel, it was lost in a sense. It was there, but nobody realized that it was there, and so we're going to be looking at that and trying to implement that. One of the things that we'll have to do is perambulate the boundary lines and mark them so that any work that is done or ski trails that might be put in or whatever it is can be put entirely on the town property. So,
please,
Mr. Maines, and Mark, maybe you would know also the plan that you're talking, is that like the forest management plan as far as for cutting and trimming trees, and now do we, and maybe that's one of your goals coming up, do we actually have these plans for the other town properties such as like Summer Street Park and And the only reason I ask is just, last year year before, we sold off a pretty good piece of property that hadn't been cut, and that was one of the benefits of someone buying it was to cut the property and to actually manage some of the forest on it. I was just wondering if we're looking at it as a town whole, with our other properties too, to see if they actually have management plans in place. And
we're actually working with a forester. We're meeting with him Thursday. We're walking some of the Beaver Park, and we're hoping to include Summer Street Park as well. Those are the two big areas that are our concern.
Yep.
And also the Androscoggin River Trail, as long as Miller Trail. Keep an eye on those two.
Yep. Now, is there much? I haven't looked as far as the other park on the other side of Pine Woods Road. Is there much forest there, or is that mostly fill from the landfill itself? I'm not sure how much acreage we actually take care of growing out there, but
we don't go past the gates. There's some stuff out there. We don't play past the gates there.
Yep.
I think there's a landfill, but there's also a firing range. I'm not sure if it's active still. But
on town property, I'm not sure if there's actually one.
Is it shooting range still up there on Pinewoods? No.
Yeah, I don't think it was addressed with the firing range ordinance that they had review that they had recently. But either way, I was just curious. It would just be nice if we actually were looking at all the town properties and just actually be able to understand if they're being managed properly. But as far as forest wise.
I did want to mention, too, that as of January 1st, 2018, the state put Norway maples on the list. You can't sell them. You can't plant them. You can't bring them in the state. And there's some other invasive species that are also on that list that we're going to be looking into.
Thank you.
Next item. Appointments?
Under appointments, none. We have councilor communications.
Anybody got anything?
Oh, good.
I got nothing. How about you? You saw stuff from?
Stay safe in the storm tomorrow, people, and stay off the roads and let Public Works do their job. And for all you guys at Public Works, thanks in advance for all the hard work you're going to do.
Next item.
Audience participation for new items.
Anybody? Yep.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. Actually, a couple of things. One is I'd like to let everyone know that we did receive a letter from the Community Development Office that Lisbon has been approved to move forward to the next stage of the $300,000 grant for the Lisbon Village project. So I'll be working on that grant. The other thing, going back on the TIF, we went through that and you kind of changed the meeting, but I didn't get any direction. I've got to work with their legal counsel on what council wants to do with the development program.
What was the motion that we made?
You set the public hearing date, but we have to have everything together for that public hearing date. So right now, the development program is strictly for my budget.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We wanted to know if we wanted to continue to fund the Office of Economic Development, or did we have a different direction that we wanted to go in?
Correct.
Is that what you're looking for? Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
The funding level isn't really changing. It's actually staying the same.
That's correct.
So pretty much what it was in the past, there was actually money that went into the economic development. There was actually, from what I remember reading and looking at the notes, there's a $5,000 a year that was going into the Moxie Festival. Is that still part of that? That's coming from
Well, we do actually 2,500, but this year I had put in 5,000 for that to help offset the fireworks. It was pretty much laid out as far as on that, but basically anything within my department, whether it be advertiser and whether it be all the memberships for the town to belong to, like AvCog or everything, came from that.
From the TIF funds.
Yes.
And I'm asking because I'm not sure. Why are we required to kind of give that direction right now? Because you're up against a deadline or timeline based on what you're working with there?
Correct.
To get that extension together in that March. So everything has to fall under that March 20, whatever it was, 7th?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's initial too.
And that's part of, with the public hearing, you need to have all that information. So when their legal counsel is going to be putting everything together, but I need the direction as far as on what does the council, how do you want to spend that 50% coming back? Do you want to keep it the same? There would be no changes to the development plan, or this is an opportunity as far as for council to look at something different.
Are we bound by that for the 5 years of the TIF?
Yes, unless you amend it.
once it's approved, I mean, I would make the recommendation that we actually keep it as it is for tonight. I mean, that's the reason we have a public hearing, is if people come forward and actually voice a concern or want us to actually make an amendment to this, that would be the time to do it. I think it's a small piece of this whole TIF that they need to actually go into. So, I mean, I would actually make my recommendation, leave it as it is for tonight, and then come to public hearing. It always could be amended if there was a change, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as that, because it's not.
Right.
Anybody can come and make a suggestion, but it may not work within the program.
That's correct.
I understand that.
DECD
Yeah.
allows. So I think what we ought to do is Tracy and I ought to come back with a couple of recommendations, because I really think you need to focus on some infrastructure, like sidewalks up in that area maybe, because there's a bulk of that amount of money that's not being spent every single year, but you can't spend it only on what's in the guidelines right there.
I'm wondering if we can serve with the B option, if you will, where we know if we fund the as is right now as an the economic development office, if we go with the B option, which is all other, and then can we define that how we choose, which means getting
Yes.
all of the, so we can get all of the services that are in the ED right now, and then maybe
We could add
one
of
identify something else.
correct. One of the things that I was working with their legal counsel on was to add sidewalk, is because I had measured out from the Webster and Village Street right at the intersection, and I did my mileage down to Dingley, so that could provide. That would go with adding sidewalks, and the idea of it is it's outside the district but still related to the district, so you have to prove those things in there. And it would allow us to extend the sidewalk. Right now the sidewalk goes to Kelly Park. There is concern with Dingley Press and speaking with them as far as the safety of their workers, because they come out of work, you're talking 347 employees, and there's no sidewalk for them, so they're out in the roadway or whatever, and this would help extend that. So just as Diane said, yes, you can do both. You can still provide the funds for my department, as well as still have other things in there that you want to do. And the idea of it is, by having something for the public hearing, is because of the timeline. Right after the public hearing goes through, then those documents have to go right up straight to the state. So we don't have a lot of time within there. I just want to make sure that I'm hearing counsel, so as I'm working with their legal counsel, that when we come back, you actually have a document that you're basically going to approve because you had a say in it.
I think.
Does that make sense?
Please.
Yes. I think it is difficult actually for the council to actually, something like this is much easier in a workshop setting where you're actually looking and trying to come up with a more of a how would I say, better thought out process.
You can also come back at a later time and amend the development program.
But I think what Norton was going to is actually not so much earmarking it as in a particular department, but earmarking it as the amount going into, as you said, B, section B in a sense, which isn't a section. But I mean, the idea of putting it, then you can actually determine later on whether
you can't.
You can't do that.
No, I think I think we're okay though, because what I think we do is, rather than identify just one office, we say we would rather have a direction that would allow us to go ahead and identify economic development office, sidewalks. Can't we do that? Is that what we're defining here?
Yes, you still have to attach a dollar figure to that. I mean, that's not a problem as far as in doing that. But you have to, one of the things that the state's going to do when they approve these programs, the development programs, they have statutes as far as, and if the criteria doesn't fit within that statutes, they won't approve it. And you keep going back and forth. Because I've been working with him on the Kelly Park Amendment. I've still been going back and forth. There's new people up there. So it's very different as far as on what their expectation is. So when you look at the Dingley Press and how it is laid out with the Economic Development Department, everything is laid out, and you have a statute that you have to attribute to that plan. So yes, sidewalks and infrastructure and those types of things can be added in there, but the wording all has to be in there, but it does need to be in there. Not saying that, this is what you got to do, but it's listing those things.
Okay, so we're meeting next Tuesday, the 13th, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Can you draft something with Diane, you two getting together? Maybe
yes.
Get something together, a little bit more concrete, and get it out to us, and then that way we can go ahead if we need to put it for next Tuesday. That we're still trying to meet that timeline, but we can get some time to digest maybe what it is we're trying to accomplish here, get a little bit more direction, and
That'd
what
be helpful.
you had both hoped or had vision for this.
Yep.
Does that make sense to everybody?
That doesn't impact anything on their side. That just impacts how we're going to invest our
Correct.
funds.
Everything on their side stays the same. I just need to know.
Dollars stay staying where it gets dispersed.
Correct.
Basically is what you need.
Exactly.
And I know I would definitely welcome understanding a little bit better than in this session right now. I want to get a little bit more in the weeds and understand.
Yeah,
what
but
you're
I
trying
wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Sure,
That's
sure.
all.
Thank
And I
you.
apologize that I didn't do. I didn't have a chance. Everything went through so fast.
I understand.
If you guys want to land with a staff recommendation or an alternative recommendation, we'll at least have dialogue.
And we can move on it on Tuesday.
When's
of next
the
week.
latest you need that you can get that information? Any time before the public hearing?
Oh, yes, because we have to, along with this, I mean, the 10th is the day that the public hearing notice has to go out.
Right.
So again, once the public hearing notice is out, then you have to have all the documents in the clerk's office for anybody to review. So everything has to, just as Diane says, everything has to kind of coincide with one another. But what I would do within the public hearing notice of the documents that go on file as far as for review, I will leave it as it is with the understanding that we have that time on the 13th to make that amendment. So when it does come back to the public hearing, it is exactly how council wants it to look like.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none. Next item, Twyla.
Is executive session, order 2018-27, 28, and 29, to move into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 405-6E, consultations with legal counsel, Section 405-6D, labor negotiations, and 405-6A, personnel matters.
Staying here or going in the other room?
Staying here.
Will there be a vote afterwards?
Yes.
There'll be at least one vote afterwards.
Who makes the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Need a second?
A second.
All in favor?
6-0. We're passed. Time 8:52, and I'll shut this off.
I can see people every time. Hi there. Yes. I'll give them that.